What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Got Next podcast. I'm your host, Mitchell Baldwin, with my co-host, Donovan Moore.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Glad to be back with y'all, man.
Absolutely. We got Ben and Bones Nate Ash back on the show with us today. Say what's up, B.
Hey, how you guys doing? It's good to be back.
Absolutely. We've been gone for the past 2-3 weeks. But yeah, we're back. We're about to recap all the past playoff games in the past couple weeks and look forward to this weekend's action. So without further ado, make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, all that type of stuff. Follow us on socials, our Instagram at the Got Next podcast. Same thing with our TikTok. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get to the intro.
Three-pointers. Outside jumper from three at the bucket.
All righty. First up, we will go ahead and cover the Browns-Texans game from not that long ago. Just kind of going to go through each one. If you got something to say, you can say it. If not, we can keep moving. Anything to say from the Browns-Texans games, fellas?
Go ahead, B.
Just that, Texans showing some promise for the future. CJ Stroud is definitely the guy. They got good receivers. They'll have Tank Dell back next year. And credit to the Browns for the season they had, too. Unfortunately, it fell apart really bad at the end. And we're actually 5-1 with Deshaun Watson this year, believe it or not. So we'll see how that goes next year. But I assume, there's no other choice. He has to be their guy next year. So these are definitely teams you'll see in the mix for the next short while.
Yeah, like you said, the Texans, rookie quarterback, rookie coach. As we all know, they made it to the divisional round. Great season for them. Really, my complaint is with the Browns. I had Myles Garrett for Defensive Player of the Year, and I just feel like as the Defensive Player of the Year, that's a game you got to step up and show up, and your offense wasn't really getting it going. But that's my only complaint with that. But overall, solid season for the Browns to make the playoffs again with a carousel like QB. But Myles Garrett, where you at?
I think this is one of the few games where I think Deshaun Watson was looking at this. He's like, either way this goes, I'm probably going to look bad. If the Texans win, everybody going to be like, I was there. Stroud will be showing up a little bit. And the Browns, they're like, we don't really do Deshaun. We got Flacco. Yeah, so. And then obviously it turned out being, Flacco not really showing up that game. I think he had truly his worst game of the season. He's had a couple games where he's had interceptions, but I feel like he's made up for it, with the yards and stuff. But this game wasn't quite able to do that. So, yep. And then CJ Stroud being the future, I think it was even more interesting how far they made it without having a run game. So that was interesting to see. But again, I think these teams will be contenders going forward. Next up, we got the Dolphins and the Chiefs. Want to say something here. I've talked about it. I think the Dolphins are frauds, man. They weren't playing anybody that wasn't Panthers or wasn't any of these low-ranked teams. They didn't, or the Cowboys. That is the one win that they had against the team above 500 this year. So if they're not playing one of these teams out here that barely show up every week, they're gonna lose and they're gonna look bad. So they went from. I think it's just poetic and shows how the season went for them. To go from scoring 70. Against the Broncos in that 1 week to then scoring 7 in your last playoff game. So big drop off there, and I think that just kind of sums up the season they've
had. Yeah, can't really say much else. The Dolphins, over the last 2 years have just proven to be a team who can't really beat teams that are better than them, and they kind of fizzle out in December. That's kind of been the story, and we all know who the Chiefs are by now. So didn't really think the Dolphins had a chance at any point in that game or going into it.
Yeah, I feel like the Dolphins, they kind of have some questions to answer, and most of the questions are coming from the quarterback position. I think they have to decide if they want to pick up Tua's fifth-year option or not. And I feel like they might be running a risk with that. You can kind of bet on Tua, and then you're stuck in the same place and run the risk of having to get a new quarterback with the weapons you have, or they can stick it out with Tua and end up overpaying, kind of like how the Giants are doing for Daniel Jones. So I feel like they're in a gray area with that, so it'd be interesting to see what they do heading forward.
Absolutely. Next up, B, you can go first here. The Steelers versus the Bills. The next matchup we're talking about here. How'd you feel about
Yeah, it was
this?
kind of crazy to see the Steelers make the playoffs again after it looked bleak after they were 7-7. Didn't look like they had a chance, but in typical, Mike Tomlin Steelers fashion, they won those last 3 games, even with Mason Rudolph, who actually played, the best out of any Steeler quarterback this whole season. But, now that we have 7 seeds instead of 6, that's what's helped the Steelers make the playoffs, 2 out of the last 3 years. And the Bills, I think, 3 out of the last 4 years, they've been the number 2 seed. So back in the day, you wouldn't have a playoff game in the first round when you're a number 2 seed. But that's definitely going to inflate Josh Allen's playoff wins because he always plays great in the first round. There's no doubt about that. But we'll get to what happens after that. But, no surprises there. I, even as a Steelers fan, expected the Bills to win that game without the person who should be Defensive Player of the Year, TJ Watt. Led the league in sacks in just about every category he led in, by the way. But they're going to give it to Myles Garrett because for some reason they want a new name. I don't know which people pick that award, by the way, but you guys should lose your jobs for that, whoever does that, because the proof was in the pudding that TJ Watt was the best defensive player this year. But other than that, Bills look great in the first round. They're a pretty good team. And I guess congrats to them, but they didn't do anything after that.
I feel like the Steelers may kind of be in that same spot as the Dolphins here, what they're going to do at quarterback. Kenny Pickett, it seems like the offense got better when he was injured, unfortunately. And for Mason Rudolph to be your third string and kind of run the offense a lot smoother than the guy who's been the starter all year has been, that's definitely kind of concerning. But at the same time, he's young, so who knows? The Steelers may give Pickett another chance this year, but I feel like Mike Tomlin, if he's still going to be coaching this season, will definitely make him earn it. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do at quarterback in Pittsburgh as well.
Definitely agree with the quarterback situation there. Be interesting to see what Tomlin, does there.
He's coming back, he said.
Oh, it's official? Okay.
Yeah, he's coaching next year.
He's coming back. All right, there you go. So not much to really talk about here. I think we're going to obviously touch on the Bills later. So next up, you got the Eagles versus the Bucks. I think that everybody might have something to say here. I guess I'll kick it off. Jalen Hurts and the Eagles as a whole just did not look great this season. A.J. Brown might be a diva. There's a couple other takeaways I had from this. But overall, shocked at the Eagles losing. I mean, everybody was telling me the Bucks were going to win, but I believe it when I see it. I kind of gave them the Chiefs treatment a little bit too early, and they didn't deserve it clearly because they lost to Baker Mayfield in the playoffs. That is nasty. So, how do you guys feel about this one?
I actually had the Bucks winning that game, and it kind of reminded me of the Steelers of like 3 years ago when they started 11-0 and finished 12-4 and lost to the Baker Mayfield-led Browns in the first round. So that's kind of what gave me the idea to pick the Bucks in this game. The Eagles started 10-1 and finished 11-6. They just kind of lost themselves towards the end of the year. Obviously, since then, both the coordinators have been fired. It's a bad look for Sirianni because it looks like both his coordinators who he lost last year to head coaching jobs didn't look like he fully knew what he was doing without those coordinators. But of course, I think he deserves another chance to hire new ones and see what he can, what he can do, what he can develop. Jalen Hurts, the story on him always was he got better every year of his life. Well, that narrative you can put to rest right now because he definitely took a step back after being the MVP favorite after 11 games. He didn't even make the Pro Bowl. I mean, he kind of fell apart. Be interesting to see if Jason Kelce comes back. I think he's going to hang it up, but we'll see if he comes back. Eagles defense definitely got a lot worse this year. Personally, I think they got exposed in the Super Bowl last year, but the fact that they played Daniel Jones and no 49er quarterback in the NFC Championship last year made their defense look a lot better than it was. And then they lost C.J. Gardner-Johnson to the Lions this last year, and they paid Bradbury. So, bad move. I still think they're a good organization. They'll figure it out, but I think I don't see them maybe winning a Super Bowl over the next year or two. I think it's going to take a little bit to build back.
I agree. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Philly. They definitely took a step back this year, as you both mentioned. It's just tough to say what direction they're headed in. It's like they have the talent, but at the same time, they have some guys that may need paydays coming up. I think Devontae Smith may be due sometime soon. Not really sure what they're doing defensively. And I also saw they're interviewing Ron Rivera to be a defensive coordinator. So that's kind of a sign of maybe not great. Yeah.
See that? That's nasty. Okay.
Yeah. That's actually nasty. So if that's one of your candidates to be the defensive coordinator, I don't see signs of good things to come in Philadelphia. I feel like Rivera's kind of outdated for the game. I don't know what's going on with the Eagles, but I think they'll still be a playoff team. But I don't think, like you said, I don't think they'll be that Super Bowl contender this next year. But they'll definitely still be a playoff team for sure, especially with the NFC East being their division.
NFC East, man, just a big clusterfuck. Being honest, it's just nasty.
Yeah, it's a bunch of questions all aboard that division. So
we don't really know who's going to come out on top. Pause.
And what I've kind of noticed for the last couple of years in that division is, Dak Prescott is guaranteed 4 great games a year when he plays the Commanders and Giants twice a year. And usually until this year, Jalen Hurts was too. I mean, I guess, both games against Washington were super high scoring this year. Mm-hmm. They tend to play the Eagles a lot better than they play Dallas. But, when those quarterbacks, Jalen Hurts and Dak Prescott, when they disappoint in the playoffs, you got sometimes remember that they had 4 games that year that were 2 were against Giants and 2 were against Commanders. And, that's where a lot of Dak's quote-unquote MVP contender stats were coming from those games. So, I mean, still good quarterbacks, but, don't get too excited because of a 40-0 win over the Giants or a 38-10 win over Washington.
Right.
It's just, they don't represent the majority of the league right now, as of right now.
Yeah. We'll touch on the Cowboys a little bit later.
I figure we're heading there next.
Got the Rams and the Lions up next. Another first-round matchup. Does anybody have anything to say here?
What a game! I mean, so much at stake. Obviously, the 2 quarterbacks playing each other's playing their former teams. The Lions. I don't. If you weren't rooting for the Lions in this game, I don't know if you have a heart, man. Like that. It had been since 91 since they've won a playoff game, or not, I guess 92 playoffs. And the crowd was rocking. They had, Eminem, 89-year-old season ticket holder in there. Like there's so many reasons to cheer him on. And of course, Jared Goff playing the great game he did, propelled the Lions to victory. And obviously I think Stafford played his heart out too. Curious to see how many more years he's going to play. But the Rams definitely seemed to turn it around this year. They had a very bad year last year and lost some good players like Jalen Ramsey, Bobby Wagner. But McVay's a great coach, and he kind of rebuilt it. And I think, they could be contenders again in a couple of years. I think, they'll stay making the playoffs and might get another shot, the Super Bowl, as long as Puka Nacua keeps improving. Definitely a lot of good signs from the Rams.
Anything here, D?
I got nothing. The great season for the Rams. I didn't think they would go as far as they did, so I definitely give them props for that. But besides that, I mean, overall good season for the Rams. It's interesting to see what Aaron Donald and McVay are going to do going forward.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I feel like Aaron Donald wasn't really there all season, to be honest. Donovan still there? Can you hear us? All right, all good. Got to keep it moving, man. Next up, we got the Packers and the Cowboys. I did want to hear what Donovan had to say about this one, but we'll try and get him here. How did you feel about this one, D?
So for this game, I thought that, I thought the Cowboys were going to win going into it. I know they've had their struggles against, the Packers in the past. And I know, McCarthy used to coach for the Packers. So I thought that was going to be, motivation for him to get that dub. But after the first drive, you could kind of sense the fear in Dallas after Green Bay scored that opening drive touchdown. And, they obviously, sunk him pretty hard in the first quarter, in the first half. And all Dallas could do was fight back in the second half. It was a little too late. Doesn't change the fact it's still had a really good year, but unfortunately, 12-5 the last 3 years. It's kind of becoming a constant there of not, doing much in the playoffs. And it was weird because they almost went almost 2 full years without. Or I'm sorry, week 1 of last year was the last home game they had lost. So it's been a long time since they had lost at home. They've been really dependable, and like I said, they were the biggest bully of the league. Like, they'll beat the Giants in Washington more than the 49ers beat those teams. You know what I mean? So, but I mean, I guess that just proves the real tryhards when they play bad teams. They're kind of like the NFC version of Miami, if you really think about it. That's why I think their game was so close with Miami, because They both haven't really beaten too many teams that are better than them. Nevertheless, I still think they have a lot of talent on their team, and I don't totally disagree with bringing McCarthy back. I think he's a good coach, but it's also like there are some good coaches on the market this time around. So, I mean, Jerry Jones must love him. They got to make some changes. Obviously, I'm not sure what they are because they definitely do have a lot of talent, but definitely disappointing as well. That's all I got.
I feel. I mean, I'm not a Cowboys fan. I despise the Cowboys. But to be honest, they do have way too much talent to kind of underwhelm how they do year in and year out. And honestly, at this point, I'm not really sure if you can really chalk it up to coaching, because it's like even when Jason Garrett was the coach, they still had talent and underperformed in the postseason. And then you bring in Mike McCarthy. So I'm not really sure if the coach can be that much of one to blame. I saw something interesting on social media, and it said that Dak Prescott is basically the black Tony Romo. He'll give you, your yards, your points. He'll get his stats up in the regular season, but once playoffs comes around, he's nowhere to be found. Like when Tony Romo bobbled the snap, I forget who they were playing that year, and then other playoff performances where he just did something detrimental to the team, or he just didn't show up on certain possessions. So it's really hard to keep blaming the coaches for the Cowboys. I feel like if somebody has to take the blame for their postseason failures, it either has to be Jerry Jones or the quarterback, because those have been the two constants throughout the last time they've made an NFC championship. So it's tough to say what's going to happen in Dallas. They're way too talented to lose at home opening round to the Packers, but I mean, it made me happy, so I'm not complaining.
I mean, if the Lions make the NFC championship before you in the last, 20 years? I mean,
30 years just about now. 30
that
years.
tells you, man. I mean, the Lions were pretty trash even just 3 years ago. So there you go. I mean, they can make a complete 180, and then you can't even go from level like 4 to 5. Like it's nasty. And I mean, ultimately, I have been saying this since he was drafted, guys. Dakota Prescott is not the guy. I had said it since 2016, bro. It's crazy. Now everybody kind of sees it. But now I feel like I agree with what B said. They kind of just they're stuck in this situation where like they got rid of like they have McCarthy and stuff, but I don't really think the coach is the issue at this point. Like my thing is people are upset that they didn't replace the coach, but it's like my thing is why they didn't replace the coach. Like you have so many other options right now. Again, like B brought up, like Harbaugh is available. You got Bill Belichick, the greatest to do it, is available, and you don't even try. Like it's just like we're good with Mike McCarthy. That's fine.
Mike Vrabel too.
Yeah, Mike Vrabel too. And then this past offseason, there was Lamar Jackson who was available. I was one of the main people saying that they should at least try to get him. I mean, a lot of people don't believe he would have went there, but that's not the point. The point is you got to try. Like you didn't even attempt to make your quarterback situation better. And then now you're going to maybe potentially give Dak Prescott a contract to make him the highest paid, quarterback in the NFL. It's like, so you're going to double down on this decision to keep Dak? Like, I don't know, man. It's nasty, honestly. And I hope that Dak can look himself in the mirror and look and be like, I didn't play well, so I don't deserve this contract. But I mean, who does that in contract negotiations? If the team is willing to throw you that money, you're not gonna be like, I don't deserve it. Keep it. Like, that's not how it works. So I mean, it's really up to the Cowboys to not offer it. I don't know if I trust them not to offer it. I mean, once you bring Mike McCarthy back, you kind of are doubling down on this team, and you can't really split up too much at that point. You're really restricted. So it's like, I really don't know what they're going to do now. The run game was trash all season. How does Tony Pollard go from 1,400 yards the season before where he's not the main back to this now being the main back? He gets 7 yards over 1,000. That is nasty. Like, he's barely over 1,000 yards. That's a 400-yard drop. Like, you have to figure out why that is. I believe it's because of the play calls. You just give the ball to Tony Pollard and be like, run up the middle. There's no pre-snap motion. There's none of that. Like, there's nothing where they're trying to help you like really become the best version of yourself. They're just here, take the ball. So, I mean, and you got the Cowboys team with no run game, and Dakota Prescott has to throw the ball 60 times a game. That's a recipe for disaster. I said that before the game, and then boom, it happens. So, not shocked to see that. But that kind of moves me. Actually, no, we already talked about this a little bit. So next on, we can take the Texans and the Ravens from this past week. How did you guys feel about this matchup?
I mean, I expected the Ravens to win, maybe not as much as they did, but definitely I thought it would be around 10, 14 points. But it just looks like once the Texans missed that field goal, and there was a lot of crucial kicks missing this past weekend. We'll get to that later. But once they missed that field goal before halftime to potentially go up 13-10, I could sense that, that they missed an opportunity to take the lead. So the Ravens just, ate them up in the second half. They basically shut out the Texans because the Texans' only touchdown was a punt return. So CJ Stroud and company really got nothing going pretty much the entire game. And, the Ravens, just look very similar to their team from, 4 years ago that went 14-2, except they won the divisional playoff game this year. They just dominate most of their opponents, other than Pittsburgh, obviously. But they dominated almost everybody this year, and I think it'd be fair to call them Super Bowl favorites. The only thing that would keep people from saying that is based on who their opponent is this week, just because other than Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes is 13-1 in the playoffs with just a loss to Joe Burrow, so doesn't really lose his AFC companion. So we'll see how that goes. Texans, like we said earlier, had a good year. They obviously need to get better to compete with the big dogs, but they don't need to get better at quarterback. They have a true winner in CJ Stroud. I think they definitely need to get better at an offensive line. For them to have had the highest paid offensive line this year, that's some trash right there. Yeah. But the Miko definitely looks like a good coach and has their defense playing all right.
Yeah.
But, not good enough for the Ravens, I guess.
As I mentioned earlier, the Texans had an absolutely great season. First-year coach, first-year quarterback. I know I definitely didn't expect them to make it that far. So just for that to be their first season and kind of set the league on notice, like they're here, that was impressive to see. So they're really going to be special for years. I'm not going to say special, but they're going to be a solid team for years to come as long as they make the right moves, obviously. But just speaking on the Ravens, they're a complete team. Defensively, it's like they're good at every level. Offensively, I think Mark Andrews may be back this week. I know Mahomes. We're going to speak on the game, but the Ravens they look pretty dangerous. They look dangerous, and then their crowd really plays more of a factor than I think people are giving them credit for. I know a lot of people speak about, the Chiefs' home field advantage and the Seattle Seahawks, but you got to give those Ravens fans some credit. I could hear it on my TV. They were loud. They caused a lot of false starts, and I feel like it gives their defense really an edge. So I like what the Ravens are doing. I really like this Ravens team, but the Chiefs are different.
Absolutely. I don't think the Ravens have been tested yet this year, guys, if I'm being honest. I don't think that they've really seen a real test. Like obviously they didn't have to play the first week, and then they got to just play the Texans with no Tank Dell and no run game at all. Like a very incomplete team, if I'm being honest. So then I felt like they were always going to beat them, like B said, by like 1 or 2 scores. I didn't expect it to be, a domination like it was, but I mean, that just shows you how different the talent level was and the skill gap there. And I always thought that skill gap was there. So it'll be interesting to see what the Ravens can do this next week. But obviously, it's pretty much what I expected the Ravens were going to win. So next up, we got the Chiefs and the Bills. This game was absolutely crazy. It came down to a missed kick. Nasty. We kind of already talked about the Bills. Is there anything else anybody wants to add on here? Maybe to the Chiefs side?
I mean, when these two teams play, there's really nothing like it. Like, I mean, they'll probably play each other in the playoffs next year, but I mean, there's no evidence that the Bills are ever going to be in the playoffs. The Bills kind of own them in the regular season, but that's the regular season. Like the Chiefs don't really care who beats them in the regular season. And to think that the Chiefs went 11-6 this year and still made it to the AFC Championship, like, are they ever going to be worse than they were this year? Like, their receiving core can't get any worse than it was in the regular season this year. So this year was really the opportunity to take them down. Obviously, the Ravens still have that chance, but if you're telling me the Chiefs still win the AFC this year, like, they might be. I mean, they kind of already are the Patriots part 2, but like right now, a little bit of a lesser version because you can't give them their flowers quite yet because they haven't achieved exactly what the Tom Brady, Bill Belichick Patriots achieved. But damn, like, they're definitely the best since, and maybe they'll be the second best dynasty ever after the Patriots. You had the Packers in the 60s, Steelers in the 70s, Niners in the 80s, the Cowboys in the 90s, and the Patriots in the 2010 or in the 2000s and the 2010s. Now we got the Chiefs in the 2020s dominating. So it's kind of like they're that next team that's just damn near impossible to beat in the playoffs. And as for the Bills, man, I mean, it's hard to imagine what they need to get better at because they're a pretty complete team. Obviously, they were depleted and had a plethora of injuries on defense this year, and they really did turn it around, but only for it to end where it almost always ends for them in the second round. You got to feel a little badly for Josh Allen and company. Don't know what happened with him and Stephon Diggs during the second half of the year, but I think he's going to stay put just because the grass isn't really greener anywhere else. You really only upgrade at quarterback if you go to Kansas City, and I can promise you the Bills will not be trading him there. So we'll see what happens there. See what happens with Gabe Davis. They obviously need a little more help at receiver. He's a free agent. I think he's replaceable, even though he's big game sometimes. And I think they're going to cut Von Miller because he got paid all that money to only have, what was it, like 12 tackles this year? He didn't even have a sack.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think his career is pretty much over, especially if this investigation turns out to be bad. But we'll see about that.
Yeah, like you said, B, the Bills have a lot of questions. That's a tough one because I think Josh Allen's cap hit for his contract, they said, kicks in starting this offseason. So that's like 40, 45, 50 million on their books. And then you're still trying to build a Super Bowl contender around them. That's going to be a tough job to do. I agree with you. I think they may move on from Von Miller, but I could see Von Miller ending up somewhere like Baltimore and then finding a way to revitalize himself. But I'm just really shocked in the Bills. You've always talked about wanting the home field advantage for the playoffs. You finally got that home field, and then Patrick Mahomes just comes in and rips your heart out. I don't know how else to describe it. I mean, you had your fans help you shovel the snow out of the stadium. If I'm a fan, I'm pissed. Like, I just pulled up. I hope y'all shovel snow. I hope clear seats. All this just to watch a loss?
You see those fans crying after the game, man. That's
he probably was one of the ones that shoveled. He probably was one of the ones that shoveled. He got up early that day. He shoveled, stayed there throughout the day, pregame, tailgate, just to stay there all day till 6 o'clock to watch a loss. Now you got to go home and go to work. You go to your regular job the next day. That's painful.
And I also think they're going to have to, probably get rid of Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. Just because, I mean, they've been a great safety duo for a long time, but they're both like almost in their mid-30s. Like, that ship is just kind of sailed. Obviously, Sean McDermott's kind of proved to be the coach that can coach anybody on defense, but that defense needs rebuilt. I think they just, outside of Matt Milano, they have a lot of old heads.
They got to get younger, which is what the Chiefs did. The Chiefs have the youngest defense in the league, and they're a top 3 defense in the league. So, albeit they took a step back on offense, their defense has really, really taken up for them for all the years their offense was carrying them. And that's what being a team is all about. Some years the offense has it, some years the defense has it, but they still have that balance, and we see where they are now.
Exactly. I thought that other contract nasty at the time it was signed to him. I'm like, bro, he's already old. Like, this is not going to end well. And I'm like, when they lost to the Chiefs before, I was never like, you're a Von Miller away from beating them the next time. Like, so I don't know why they thought that was the answer. Clearly is not the answer. But then I'm like, I also don't think you should just give up on Von Miller now because he's coming off that big injury. Like, one more year removed, I think he actually will be something. So, like, for you to then just get rid of him the next year is even dumber. So, I mean, I feel like you're kind of stuck with the whole Von Miller thing. And then you got Stephon Diggs, who's always been upset about his second half woes of the season. And then it happened again this year. But then this time it ended bad on him because obviously he missed that big catch at the end. But it's like he still has evidence from like week 8 that his production dropped off significantly for the second half of the year. This is the second year in a row it's happened. It happened earlier this year, actually. So, like, I don't see why he comes back. I wouldn't want to be there again. So, like, I don't know, bro. The Bills are just – and, again, my biggest takeaway from the game was what B said in the beginning. Like, this is the Chiefs' worst season I think I've seen so far. Like, this is the worst they were going to be, and you still could not beat them. Like, it's just nasty. Like, they're going to go get a receiver this year, and then what you going to do? It's over, bro. Like, it's over for them. So, and obviously I gave Mahomes the Mahomes treatment that he deserves, man. I'm not going to believe that the Chiefs are bad and all this stuff until they lose. Because, again, what's different with the NFL playoffs and NBA playoffs is, like, it's not a 7-game series. It only takes one game to make it to the next round. I'm never, ever going to go against Mahomes in one game. It's a one-game scenario. That's not crazy to say that he can just make it back. So, and you see it. They're back. So, I really don't think it's that crazy. And then he was always supposed to win this game. It's the Bills, bro. They're going to find a way. Next up, we got the Packers versus the Niners. I think you guys talked about before how the Packers should have won this game. So just talk a little bit about that, B.
Yeah, it was crazy to see. I actually thought like in the fourth quarter the Packers were going to win, but once they missed that field goal to go up by 7, they gave the Niners a shorter field, and for the first time, I don't want to say ever, but seems like ever, the Niners won a game coming from behind, which was like Coach Kyle Shanahan's Achilles heel as their coach. They know how to dominate games and get the lead early, but when they come from behind, because the stigma has always been since they have a not a bad quarterback, but one that benefits more from the team as opposed to being the catalyst. It's been hard for them to come back and win games. But I mean, credit to them. They put together a game-winning drive and got an interception to seal the game. That was definitely the most tested I've ever seen them before an NFC Championship game, because they always get there. And that was almost too close for comfort. Brock Purdy didn't particularly play well, but at least he, was able to put his performance to the side for the final drive and help engineer that game-winning drive. I think personally they dodged a bullet because they had like a 21-day rest window. They didn't play starters that last game of the year, so I think they had to kick off some of the rust. And I think the Packers also have a really good future. They're like the youngest team in the league. I think they need to get a little better at receiver and get a little better on defense. But Matt LaFleur proved he's a legit coach. He kind of comes from that McVay, Shanahan. He comes from the Washington staff, McVay, Shanahan, O'Connell, and all them. But he's proven to be a lethal coach, and I think the Packers definitely have a bright future. They're a damn good organization. They know how to get quarterbacks to play in that franchise. So definitely the sky is bright for the Packers.
Yeah, I agree. The Packers have a bright future. The Packers, it's just like they don't miss on quarterbacks, or everybody just gets to sit and learn, and then they just hit the ground running. I don't know what it is, but I agree with you. Matt LaFleur really showed his coaching chops. He proved, he didn't really need Aaron Rodgers. The Packers were still a very solid team. And honestly, they could have went in there to San Francisco and got the win. But the 49ers, Deebo Samuel's status is up in the air this week, I think. So I think if he doesn't play, he kind of changes how their offense can create their mismatches that they're so great at doing. But I think they shouldn't have any trouble with the Lions. But the 49ers, they should be good. Their defense, I think, needs to play better than what they did if they want to make it back to the Super Bowl, because I think the Lions have a bit of a better offense than Green Bay. And I think they can beat them in more of a variety of ways. So I think the Niners' defense may need to step up more than their offense does.
Never a doubt for me, man. Even when they were down significantly, I was like, I think the Niners are still gonna find a way. The team is too good, guys. Like, I couldn't see it. Like, I honestly just could not see it, bro. And then they wound up pulling it out at the end. Pause. So happy for them, but I feel like Brock Purdy, he checked a couple boxes this week, man, that everybody was saying about him. Can't come back when he's down. Not a fourth quarter guy. When the team needs it, is he gonna show up? He goes on that last drive at the end. Deebo Samuel is out for most of the game, so he has a guy down. One of his weapons isn't there. People said that all the weapons have to be there, all this stuff. That went out the window. And then they get a clutch win when they were railing. So that's another check box. Like, I mean, what else do you need from Brock Purdy at this point? He proved a lot of people wrong this week, and I feel like this next week is actually going to be a piece of cake for the Niners, if I'm being honest. I think it'll be at least a touchdown. Could be more than that. I could definitely see that. But I think the Niners, shook off some rust, this last week, and I think that they'll be ready to face the Lions. Next up, we got the Bucs versus the Lions. We were just talking about. I know you guys already said a couple points about this game. Is there anything else you want to add?
I just want to say, did any of you notice when the Lions took that final knee with 30 seconds left, the Bucs still had one timeout, and they didn't use it?
Yeah,
it confuses the heck out of me, because I'm like, Todd Bowles said, their coach after the game said it wouldn't have mattered because they would have had a short field goal to kick. But I'm like, you could have blocked that field goal and returned it for a touchdown and tied the game. Would you just not think your team was capable of that? But even beyond that, the whole Buccaneers defense started shaking hands. Everyone started coming out on the field. I'm like, if I'm on that team, I'm yelling at my coach to call a timeout because there's a timeout left. And I just think that's inexplicable. I know they won the Super Bowl a few years ago, so it's like not like they've made the playoffs 4 years in a row, so it's not like they're desperate for success. But I'm like, that's awful right there. Like, How do you not call a timeout there? The Lions were dumb enough to take the knee with 30 seconds left, and they were still like 15 seconds on the play clock. And I'm like, were both teams not aware that the Bucs had a timeout left? It doesn't make any sense. I'm surprised it's not being talked about more. But I mean, that's terrible right there.
No, I agree. I agree with you. That's crazy. But only thing I have to say is, props to Baker Mayfield on really going out there and playing some good football this year. People didn't expect much of the Bucs. I know I didn't. I kind of expected the Saints to win that division, but for the Bucs to win the division and win a playoff game, I gotta give them props. So great season to Tampa Bay.
As a Baker Mayfield hater, I have to say the same. What a season for Baker after all the shit that happened last season. Him getting benched for Sam Darnold. He was benched when Christian McCaffrey was still there. Like, that should tell you that he was pretty awful when he did play. So wasn't expecting much this year, and then goes out and they make the playoffs. Obviously, Mike Evans was a big part of that. Bob White had an absolutely great season as well.
Yeah.
So I think, but a lot of their guys are free agents this year. I think that the run might be over, so they're going to try and get any picks and stuff as they can, get some guys shipped out, and figure it out from there. But I like what the Bucs did this season, and I think it's to be commended. And I have to say it, man. Baker Mayfield played better than Tom Brady in his last season.
It's crazy to think.
Crazy to say, but yeah, I said it. Go. That's all you can get out of me, Baker. I'm still a hater. Anyway, next up, we got the Chiefs versus the Ravens coming up this weekend. This one's going to be hot. I already said who I have, but I will say it again. Chiefs, Mahomes. I think the Ravens really do get tested this week, and I think you see playoff Lamar show his head. Anybody else?
I thought that was a great point that you brought up, that they haven't really been tested this year. Obviously, the first thing I thought was, they beat the 49ers on the road, which is a good win. But I think quarterback-wise, they really haven't played a super lethal quarterback yet. I mean, they played Jared Goff and Brock Purdy, who are good, but those guys are both kind of dependent on their teammates to be pretty good too, as is everybody. But Patrick Mahomes is a different story. They've lost the worst of the Chiefs this year at home. They lost to the Colts and the Browns at home. So, I mean, it's tough because it's the biggest game for them. I think they're the better team all around, but it's all about can they stop Patrick Mahomes when it matters? And I know John Harbaugh was like Andy Reid's apprentice. I mean, he was under his coaching staff for the Eagles for all those years before he took the head coaching job of the Ravens. So, I mean, got to assume Andy Reid knows most of what John Harbaugh knows about, not all of what he knows, and a lot more. So, I mean, it's a tough game to pick. I think Travis Kelce, I don't think anyone's surprised that he kind of came alive in last game because, we all knew Mahomes was going to give him the ball in the playoffs. It's a tough game to pick. I don't even know who I'm going to pick as I'm talking to you guys right now. But give me the Chiefs. Give me the Chiefs.
Yeah, baby.
I just think the fairy tale story ends for Baltimore on Sunday. Just think the Chiefs are a special team.
This is tough. This is tough because it's hard to go against the Chiefs, like you all both know, and you already chosen the Chiefs. Mahomes just always finds a way to get it done, but oh man. The Ravens are at home. They're in Baltimore. Crowd's going to be rowdy. They got the #1 defense. I'm going to go with the Ravens. I got the Ravens. This Bennett, you've seen The Wire. We watched The Wire a few times. This is going to be like when Omar is coming, around the corner with his shotgun.
Oh, Baltimore's a tough place to be for a visitor, man. I see where you're going with that one.
I feel like this game is going to be like when Omar walking around the corner with his shotgun and he's just whistling. You're going to see Lamar just whistling, walking through the stadium. I think Odell Beckham will have a big game. He just finds ways to have big games, and especially on that run he had with the Rams going to the Super Bowl, he found a way to have a big game. Mark Andrews coming back, I think is huge. Is Marlon Humphrey playing this week too?
I don't know about Humphrey, but I know Andrews is playing. I think Humphrey's going to play, though.
If Humphrey plays, I feel like that plays in the Ravens' favor because the Ravens, they're just so versatile defensively. Then you got Kyle Hamilton, an all-pro at safety. You got an all-pro linebacker in Roquan Smith, who I feel like can kind of you can't stop Travis Kelce, but you can hope to contain him in different ways. And I feel like the Ravens have different ways they can contain and handle Travis Kelce. It's going to be an extremely close game. Don't get me wrong, but I just feel like this is just Baltimore's year. I believe in Lamar. I don't know what it is. I know he's had his struggles in the playoffs, but he also has never had weapons like this on any of his playoff teams. His first year winning the MVP, I think his best wide receiver was Devin Duvernay, maybe. I don't like compared to what he has now in Zay Flowers, Odell, Bateman. Then you got Likely, your backup tight end. You still got Mark Andrews. You still got a top O-line. And then just match that with their defense. And then you got the best kicker maybe the game has ever seen. I like the Ravens at home. This is going to be extremely tough. I mean, if I'm wrong, it's my home, so I won't feel too bad, but I'm going with the Ravens.
Only pushback I have is I don't think that this receiving core is that great, if I'm being honest, outside of Flowers. I think it's a significant drop off after Flowers.
I can see how you say that. I could definitely see how you say that.
Odell going off, but I can also see Odell getting shut down because it's the Chiefs. And again, you guys saw the Chiefs defense is great. Like Chiefs defense is really probably the best it's been in years, and they still got Jones, as a linebacker and stuff. So I think that obviously. I just don't think that the receiving core is enough. Now, their running game this year has been transcended, I feel like. Gus Edwards, you had Keith Mitchell for a couple weeks. I think he's out for the season now. But you had, a couple guys that were dying throughout the season. Justice Hill is still there. But, the running game is still good. But and you guys talked about, playing in Baltimore is tough. There were a couple times this last week Baltimore was mighty quiet. It was real kind of quiet in there, man. It was really interesting to hear. So I think that can happen again. I wouldn't be shocked. Again, they've lost to worse in Baltimore this year, so that's my only pushback there. But next up, I thought that though, beginning of the season, that the Ravens receiving core wasn't that great. They've outperformed, I believe, but I think that they will regress to the mean this week.
I think it's better. It's better than what Lamar's been accustomed to.
No, it's definitely better. Like Devin Duvernay is your best receiver. I mean, what you doing with that? Like realistically, but I think Zay Flowers is still a good receiver, even though he's a rookie receiver. Though he hasn't seen these type of coverages, things like that. So I think things get a little this week. So the Niners and the Lions already talked about. I think this will be a pretty easy game for the Niners.
I think it's interesting if Debo doesn't play. My ultimate guess is that he doesn't play, just because I know it's a playoff game, but if he takes this week off and they win, that shoulder's probably almost right for the Super Bowl. But I think they can still win without him. I think they're at home. I do think the Lions Cinderella story, does have to end at some point. I think out of the 4 teams left, I'd say they're the least likely to win the Super Bowl. But it doesn't change that it was no matter what happens, they've had a great season, and I wouldn't be sad at all to see them in the Super Bowl. But I do think the Niners, this was their year going into it. It'll be interesting to see if they do win this game, because the only criticism I can think of for Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch and company is that they've built so many teams that have gotten pretty close to the finish line, just haven't finished. You can't really call them like a Dallas, a Miami, or all these other teams, that get to the playoffs and lose. They're always, guaranteed to be there at the end. But they just really, is Brock Purdy really that much better than Jimmy Garoppolo that it's going to make the difference finally this year? I think only time will tell. He definitely has to play better than how he played last week, but the supporting cast is there. It always has been there, and it looks like it always will be there. It's unbelievable what they've done over the last 5 years, and I think they get the Super Bowl one more time, and we'll see if they win it. I think they'll probably be underdogs, no matter who it is, because the two opponents who they could possibly play in the Super Bowl are the two teams that they've lost to in the Super Bowl. Obviously, the Ravens a long time ago, but the Chiefs was recent, and they lost to the Ravens on Christmas. So it'll be interesting to see if they can finally knock off a big dog in the AFC. But they got to beat the Lions first, and I think it won't be a blowout, but I don't think we'll be too close either. I think the Niners win in advance to Super Bowl 58.
I honestly think this game may be closer than some people are expecting, because Jared Goff has been to a Super Bowl before. He knows what it takes to get there. And I just feel like when you're an underdog and nobody really is expecting much of you, you don't have any pressure on you. So just going into San Francisco with no pressure, I feel like the Lions like the 49ers have all the pressure on them. They're coming off of last year losing to Philly, and they're like, we didn't have Purdy. Now you got Purdy. So just to have Purdy in there is kind of like Super Bowl or nothing for the 49ers. So all the pressure's on them. I feel like the Lions are coming in there playing free. I would not be surprised if the Lions won, but I think ultimately in the end, the 49ers will prevail just because they've been in this situation year in and year out. I feel like you kind of finally got to get over that hump and win it. I don't know if they'll win it this year, but I think at the minimum they'll make it. It'll be an extremely close game. I can see it coming down to a game-winning kick or maybe even overtime, but the Lions will win and make it back and make it to the Super. Not the Lions. I'm sorry, the 49ers. 49ers will win and make it to the Super Bowl. I did not mean the Lions, but I think it will be a very, very close game.
Niners. That's it. I already said my pick, so there you go. Anybody have anything else to add here?
Man, it's been a great season, exciting season, and can't wait for the finish.
Facts.
Absolutely. Go Chiefs. I'm talking about it right now in my group chat. Hope you guys have a good one, man. We'll talk to you guys next week.
Yes, sir.